Back in 2019, a research paper landed that quietly set the stage for the whole AI revolution we're seeing today. It's an incredible story. The story of how an AI learned to do things it was never, ever taught. So let's break down exactly how they pulled it off.
So let's just start with a question that really gets to the core of this whole thing. Can an AI actually learn a skill it wasn't explicitly trained for? I mean, it sounds almost impossible, right? It's kind of like trying to learn how to ride a bike just by reading a massive random pile of books.
For decades, the main way we've taught AI has been through what's called supervised learning. It's pretty straightforward. You feed it a bunch of labeled data. You show it a cat photo and say, this is a cat. You do that millions of times, and you get a cat recognizer. Simple. But the approach in this paper, whoa, it was completely different. It was unsupervised. You just dump billions of unlabeled words from the internet into the AI, and somehow, out the other side, you get a general-purpose problem solver? How?
And that really brings us to the central mystery here. How in the world does a machine learn to do these complex, sophisticated things, like translating languages or summarizing a dense article, without a single specific lesson for any of them?
And just look at the list of skills that just emerged. We're not talking about one little party trick here. This model, which they call GPT-2, could answer questions, it could write summaries, it could translate, and it could even show signs of common sense reasoning. And remember, all of this without being specifically programmed for any of it.
So, how did it work? What was the secret sauce? Well, it wasn't some ridiculously complex set of instructions. Actually, it was the exact opposite. The real key was giving the AI one single and almost deceptively simple goal.
And that one goal was simply this: get ridiculously good at predicting the next word in a sentence. That's it. You give it a piece of text, and its entire job is to just guess what word comes next. It's a task called language modeling, and it turns out to be way more powerful than it sounds.
So here was the researchers' big bet. They had a hunch that to get really good at predicting the next word across a huge and messy data set like the entire internet, the model would be forced to learn more than just grammar. To do its job well, it would have to start to understand logic, facts, and even the hidden structures of how we share ideas.
But okay, a simple goal isn't quite enough by itself. To really make this thing sing, the researchers needed a recipe with two very special ingredients. And both of them were used at a scale that, at the time, was just completely unprecedented. First, they needed a model that was just absolutely massive. GPT-2 had 1.5 billion parameters. You can think of these parameters as tiny little knobs that the AI gets to tune and adjust as it learns. And 1.5 billion, that was a huge leap in size, over 10 times bigger than the model that came before it.
The second ingredient was a data set to match that massive model, a staggering 40 gigabytes of text for the model to read, process, and learn from.
And it wasn't just about the sheer amount of data. It was about the quality, too. The team built a whole new data set called web text by scraping over 8 million web pages. And their source was pretty clever. They used links that had been shared on Reddit that had at least 3 upvotes. It was a neat way to filter for content that actual humans found interesting or valuable. So, you take this huge model, you feed it this massive, high-quality data set, and you give it just one simple goal. What happens next? Well, the results were nothing short of astonishing, and they really pointed towards a completely new way of building AI.
What they found was incredibly clear. As the models got bigger, their ability to perform these brand new, untaught tasks got consistently and predictably better. Scale wasn't just making the model better at predicting words, it was unlocking completely new, emergent skills.
For example, the researchers found that if you gave the model an article and just typed TLDR at the end, for too long didn't read, it just understood. It had seen that pattern so many times online that it learned that those letters are supposed to be followed by a summary. So it generated one.
Even more shocking, it started to learn translation. Now, this was wild because the data set was almost all in English, but the model had seen just enough random examples of French text online to start figuring out the patterns of a whole other language, even if it wasn't perfect.
And yeah, it could answer factual questions. It wasn't looking things up on Google. It was pulling information that was stored inside its own parameters, facts it had absorbed from all the text it had read. And when it was most confident in its answers, it was hitting an impressive 63% accuracy.
This incredible ability, performing a totally new task without any specific training, well, it has a name. It's called zero-shot learning.
And honestly, if there's one idea to take away from this whole thing, it's that one. The model was learning to generalize, not just to specialize.
Which, of course, leads to the biggest question of all. Was this model truly learning? Or was it just a sophisticated parrot performing an amazing act of memorization by just repeating stuff it had already seen online?
Now, the researchers were totally aware of this possibility. I mean, it's the first thing you'd ask, right? So they did a really careful analysis. They took all the data they used to test the model's skills, and they checked to see how much of that exact text had appeared in its massive 40-gigabyte training library.
And the results were pretty definitive. On average, there was only a tiny 3.2% overlap. That means the vast majority of the time, the model was working with new and unique text. This was powerful proof that it was genuinely applying what it had learned, not just copying and pasting from memory.
So this all points to this really powerful new idea, unsupervised multitask learning. The AI was only trained to do one thing, predict the next word. But to get good at it, it accidentally learned to do a whole bunch of other things. It learned about summarizing, translating, and even basic facts about the world, because those were all helpful sub-skills for being a better word predictor.
And at the end of the day, this is why this all matters so much. This paper basically showed a new way forward, a path away from building these narrow, specialist AIs for every single little problem, and a path toward creating these general, flexible models. It really laid the foundation for the powerful AI tools we all use every day.
And that leaves us with a really fascinating thought to chew on. The principles they discovered with GPT-2 back in 2019, well, they've been scaled up exponentially since then. So if an AI can learn skills we never even intended to teach it, you have to wonder what other capabilities are emerging right now, and what could that mean for our future?